Welcome to CSIS Online. The way we bring you events is changing, but we'll still present live analysis and award-winning digital media from our Dracopoulos Ideas Lab. All on your time, live or on demand. This is CSIS Online.
Welcome to CSIS. I'm Sujay Shivakumar, a Senior Fellow at CSIS and Director for the Renewing American Innovation Project. CSIS launched this project earlier this year, recognizing that innovation and national security are deeply coupled, and that the world has changed significantly in the past decades. What we need now is to renew our focus and commitment to sustaining this very American virtue in this changed world. And the virtue I speak of is, of course, innovation. Today, we're pleased to welcome the Honorable Haley Stevens, Congresswoman from the 11th District in Michigan, for a conversation on the future of American innovation, competitiveness, and society. She's a member of the House Committee on Education and Labor, and she's the chair of the Subcommittee on Research and Technology of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. In short, Haley Stevens knows the issues, and she's working on legislation to strengthen US innovation and competitiveness. Today's conversation will be facilitated by Walter Copan, the former director of the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. Currently, he's Vice President for Research and Technology at the Colorado School of Mines. And we are very fortunate to have him here at CSIS as a senior advisor to the Renewing American Innovation Project. It promises to be a very rich conversation. So let me first invite the Congresswoman to share any introductory remarks she has, and then it's back to Dr. Copan. Thank you very much.
Well, we certainly have a very robust dialogue here today, and I'm so honored to be with all of you and to be with my friend and collaborator, Dr. Walt Copan. Look, I represent a part of the country that is known for its rich innovation in automotive technology and defense production and aerospace, and that's right here in southeastern Michigan. And the question that I implore of my colleagues in the Congress is, we in 2019 celebrated and recognized 50 years of the moon landing. And the question that we got to ask ourselves is, what's our moonshot of the next 50 years? Where and how are we proliferating and propagating new innovations? We talk about this in terms of winning the future. We obviously have a very unique and strategic approach as the United States of America, and yet we've also got foreign competition. So just like way back when, we've got to benchmark ourselves against our friendly competitors, sometimes not so friendly in this space, and think about how we can harness the best of American talent through all geographies and demographics, and harness the best innovations along with not only private sector enterprises at the table, but also our government and nonprofit and academic institutions that are so rich to this ecosystem and the forging of new ideas, new solutions, and new applications. So really looking forward to being with you today. Thank you for the great introduction, Traj, and Dr. Copan. Excited for today's dialogue.
Thanks so much, Chairwoman Stevens. It's great to have you on this armchair conversation today. And the topics we'll be covering are so close to what have been your focus on research and technology, the future of US innovation and competitiveness, advanced manufacturing, the future of the workforce. So as we get started, could you just give us some history? Can you tell us a little bit more just about how you came to decide to run for Congress, to represent the 11th District of Michigan? And also, why did you seek to serve as chair of the House Subcommittee on Research and Technology and to be part of science, space, and technology?
Yeah. Well, I won't usurp our entire dialogue with the long story, but in short, my motivations came from working in a R&D research lab focused on the future of work in manufacturing, particularly with IoT applications and rapid digitization that was really coming to the table. And I saw a missing voice in the Congress for the manufacturing sciences, the innovation capabilities, the supply chain securitization need. Obviously, chips and semiconductor challenges are, all the dialogue today. Well, I've been an enthusiast and a policy maker, I guess you could say, in that space for a really long time, and saw in my neck of the woods here in the suburbs of Detroit, what we call Metro Detroit, where we've got the largest concentration of automotive supplier jobs running through my district, and certainly in the supply chain, you see so much innovation capabilities. And I thought, one, this is a way to bring our country together. When you talk about manufacturing, when you talk about innovation, when you talk about STEM education, not very controversial topics, and certainly also a way to bring Midwestern lawmakers together. And so I put up my hand to run for Congress based on that commitment and that experience, and also having served in the Obama administration in the U.S. Department of the Treasury as the chief of staff on the U.S. Auto Rescue during the Great Recession, when we saw a whole host of volatility, and in particular with General Motors and then Chrysler looking at true liquidation and true bankruptcy in the face. And so was a part of just a superstar team of people who put together the largest managed industrial bankruptcy in the history of this country, saving the two companies, bringing them back to viability, as well as 200,000 Michigan jobs. So that was also a point of conversation when I was campaigning, and then winning the seat. We had I think a really large freshman class come in, about 83 new members from both sides of the aisle. A lot of change in the air, a lot of people jockeying for different committee assignments. And my priority was to get on the science committee. And in part, it was sitting in that research lab and working on NIST funded projects and seeing the banner come across, the headline banner come across that, based on some budgetary cuts that were being proposed, that we were going to have a lost generation of scientific research funding. And I just didn't see that as acceptable. And as someone who was working really closely with NIST and applying for NSF dollars and the like, and I just thought, geez, this has just been a motivation of mine. Well, this committee oversees these agencies, so made it my number one choice. Didn't take anything for granted. Kind of had assurance I was going to get on the committee. Got on the committee, and lo and behold, the way it kind of worked out with the waiver system and this and that, I was, in line in seniority to become a subcommittee chair, which was, a complete pinch me moment. I mean, a real dream come true to oversee in an authorizing capacity, the NSF and the NIST and the Economic Development Administration's innovation programs, where I'd worked for a while previous to coming to Congress. And so I took the opportunity to do it because that was my very motivation to actually run for Congress, Dr. Gopan.
Well, we're thrilled that you have, and thank you for your service. Thank you for the enthusiastic leadership that you provide, and I believe also serving as a role model for bipartisanship in trying to accomplish the objectives together for the nation. And the Senate and the House are now taking an important series of actions to strengthen U.S. innovation competitiveness. You referred to another moonshot, and certainly in the era immediately after World War II, the United States had invested significantly in research and technology, approaching 2% of U.S. GDP of federal investment in research and technology. Now, of course, the U.S. is reassessing its competitive position globally. And what are your perspectives on what the U.S. needs to do regarding federal investment in research and technology?
Yeah, certainly we find ourselves at a new moment. You can read some reports that talk about, the place that we are with R&D spend as a nation. And certainly there's a lot of exciting things going on in a multitude of agencies. I obviously mentioned NSF and NIST, but there's DARPA and the Department of Energy research applications, even things that are taking place out of the Mantech office at the Department of Defense, the funding entities that actually were co-investors in the research lab I was working on through the Manufacturing USA program. And yet we are compelled to ramp up our spend. We are looking at places where we're being edged out. Battery technologies is obviously something really critical to the region I call home, with electric vehicles in particular starting to proliferate in the consumer base. And when we think about supply chain securitization, and I've got one of 2 electrolyte manufacturers in the United States located in my district, how are we not being more competitive in that regard? Quantum, biotechnology, data storage capabilities, artificial intelligence, lots have been written about, where's the US leadership in terms of artificial intelligence. And at the same time, Dr. Copan, we're figuring out how to regulate our social media empires and kind of make sure that we have a more fair and just and equitable society, and not one driven by falsehood and unregulated conspiracy theories. And so our piece of this, right, if we're going to tackle privacy, and I certainly have got a nice bill on privacy enhancing technologies, and where we want to go from there, but it's got to be hard-nosed around an actual staid and established investment structure through the United States government that, by the way, has a terrific return on its spend. So you can look at the doubling of the scientific research budget that we've put forward through the NSF. I led the effort for the NSF for the Future Act. So that's kind of one slice of a broader package that has been passed through the Senate, the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, which is a sizable investment through a multitude of agencies, the most prominent being the National Science Foundation, to plus up our scientific research budgets and look at commercial applications out of scientific research, obviously also protecting basic research, which is so important to the National Science Foundation, looking at how we're utilizing the National Institute of Standards and Technology for small and medium-sized enterprises in particular, the standards, and also the place making for the small companies that are being impacted by a multitude of needs and wants coming out of NIST. I always say that's the agency that does a whole heck of a lot with a not a whole heck of a lot of investment. And so we can kind of measure that out in terms of what we're investing into various agencies. And obviously chips and the chip shortage, we've kind of found ourselves at a moment of crisis. In the 1990s, we were making nearly 40% of the world's semiconductor chips. Now we've got 12% of that market share. Yet we innovated this product, yet we invented it. And so, and yet we employ people in this industry, except for there's just been a piece that's made this more attractive to making these products overseas, particularly in the East. And it's not just labor, right? It's these investment and incentive packages that are kind of tied into this innovation work. And so we don't want to be thinking narrowly either. We want to be thinking long-term and broadly. But I think really putting our money where our minds are, and that's investing in every mind in the United States, making sure we've got equitable STEM education. We heard this over and over again from the scientific research community, continue to invest in all people, be it through demographics or different geographies. So, I'm excited about the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act. I think we'll, kind of bring some of the House components in with the Senate components, but the goal is to get this, passed and signed into law. We had very bipartisan support in the Senate, and I expect similar in the House.
That's a tremendous overview, and it's very clear that there are common goals for not only more effective investment in science and technology, but it's in its effective translation to create jobs, to create economic impact. And so with the legislation, the USICA from the Senate side, and that's brought together the Endless Frontier Act, where Senator Schumer and Senator Young were co-sponsors amongst others. And then also the bills that you've been involved in from the House side. What are the key issues that you believe need to be addressed between the House and the Senate to ultimately come to resolution on the future of USICA and the related bills in the House to implement what the nation needs?
So in the Senate package, we have just a very broad and kind of expansive suite of legislative priorities that got passed and put in there. And, it's sort of been, kicked over to the House, kicked over to this conference process to prioritize. And, I really see a few things manifesting in this regard. One, the CHIPS funding. We got the $52 billion in there for the design components, the R&D components, and obviously the manufacturing piece of this as well. And it was really done right, because not all chips are the same. The complex, ones, the ones that go into the car, the automobiles, the different types of fabs that need to get created. And I really see that as a linchpin of this legislative portfolio. Look, I don't want to skip over, and it's certainly appropriate to talk about kind of the other competitiveness component of the legislation, which is, what's going to happen with NASA. And I think on the House side, we have really embarked on an approach with the NASA reauthorization and the funding of NASA in a very studious and diligent way. And I share this because, look, we don't want to see these technological capabilities. We've got private sector entities that are investing at scale, creating jobs. I got a lot of suppliers here, who have been in automotive and over the years have diversified into aerospace, seeing their products go into those rockets that go to the moon or that will go to the moon or into outer space are just really exciting. And, we don't want to have just a monolith approach. Now, I share this also because I think that it is going to be a question on the docket if we pursue NASA through the conference process or if we remove it. And that might lower the price tag. I think on the NSF portions of the bills that are in the House and in the Senate, and obviously the Senate package being the one that has passed, we'll negotiate that out. Some questions around the directorate and the funding schemes. I've been an NSF applicant before. I know our scientific research community feels pretty strongly about how they pursue these dollars and not creating additional roadblocks, but with the emphasis of expanding the technology directorate to continue to include some of these other applications and these commercial opportunities, and more so looking at areas where we've been weaker. And I've got to give you mentioned Senator Young, and obviously there's Senator Schumer, who's just really taken a leadership role here and said, hey, base level, we're behind, right? We've got all this hunger and thirst out there for quantum. We've got all these technological applications that we can provide through our supply chain. Let's not forget cybersecurity here as well, and how important that is. And so I think that you'll see that being at the negotiating table and sort of being a cornerstone, as well as what ultimately might get invested in with regional innovation hubs, or technology hubs as we're calling it. And that's a great matchmaking opportunity with what we're doing with NSF. Having regions kind of self-declare where their strengths are, harness those assets that exist from the community college level to the small business supply chain, and also maybe entrepreneurship capabilities as well. And we just need to do that because we don't want to be, picking winners and losers, or seeing regions, continue to struggle with deindustrialization or small business squeeze. And so it's a really right moment to do the technology hub piece as well. That will further enable our ability to compete.
Thanks so much for those insights, and we've been talking also about the unprecedented competition from China and other nations, and we're in a time of the linkage between economic competitiveness and national security. What do you think are the highest priority issues that the U.S. needs to address at this time, with nations who are also key parts of the supply chain for the U.S., and recognizing that a lot of the inventions that originally came from the United States are now being manufactured in China and sold globally?
Yeah, I have a couple of higher level thoughts on this before I get granular. Well, one is, if you look at the plight of this nation to the point that we're at now in the 21st century, so the last 20 plus years, it has been a story of unbelievable and unprecedented innovation and ushering in of new technologies, from where we were with the gig economy at the start of the century to where we are now with the massive arrival of IoT. Obviously, you can look at the phone in your pocket to an entire gig economy that, frankly, we propagated. We stood up as a nation, and the tools and the technologies absolutely came from the United States of America. And yet we kind of drove on lower costs, obviously looking at global supply chains and the interconnectedness of how products get made. I'll tell you, as someone who has a program called Manufacturing Monday, right? I go and see a small business, the innovators, the makers of my district on a regular basis. I've done over well over 100 of these visits, and by and large, I'm never not in a company and not seeing where they're making and selling internationally. You just got to, it's easy to say buy America, but buy American, make it in America. Obviously, those are really exciting and important components, but you can't just say that and will it. You've got to look at the complexity of global supply chains. And I think it's also important too, I love how you frame your question, as we benchmark, this race that we're in, this competition that we're in. And, we can't rest on, totally our laurels of the past. We need to continue to, spur the technology, innovations that are taking place. We need to continue to harness the capabilities of our supply chain. And so, looking and identifying some of the weaknesses, as you've asked, and some of the priority areas, cybersecurity continues to be just absolutely paramount, which is why I'm really excited about continued investment in NIST in particular, with kind of the unassuming agency that's just really been leading the way. I was there when NIST and DoD signed an MOU on cybersecurity for the manufacturing supply chain, and we need to continue to kind of break down some of those barriers that exist between our supply chain and our original equipment manufacturers, as well as more so our procurement agencies, particularly within the DoD. That's national security. I think we've got to aggressively be mapping out the existing assets in this nation. When I say assets, it's we love our community colleges and our universities, and certainly some of these nonprofit collaborative platform organizations that come together, but we need to look at the small companies. I mean, you think about the knowledge pool that we have in our congressional office that I'm sitting in right now through that Manufacturing Monday program. Well, how are you going to identify some of these missing middles and then come up with the strategy to either diversify, which is what you'll get with this regional tech hub approach in the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, and with also the doubling of NSF. So identifying those missing middles in our supply chain and figuring out how to address it, that's going to be the really, really hard and kind of ruthless work. And, lastly, I'll just say, we've obviously got to get serious about materials. Exciting things happening in the composite space. I mean, I'm like ready to go take another class on this. It's like, it's just unbelievable what a lot of these makers are doing with composites right now. And yet we're really stretched in terms of the cost of materials right now, and some of just our basic steel, aluminum. We're hearing the auto industry talk about magnesium. This is obviously all related to the, it ties in with the chips consideration, but I don't want to be naive to material costs and, what we're even experiencing with plastics and recyclability and reman and on and on and on. So, infinite potential and opportunity, and just really applauding all of the hardworking men and women in this country who are in this space, because they have been rising to that industrial call to action, solving PPE supply chain challenges that hit us when this pandemic first came to our shores. And yet at the same time, we still have, we're doing amazing things with electric vehicle technology, new product design, on and on and on. It's like it hasn't gotten totally in the way of our innovation capabilities either.
Well, thanks. And you've really been a champion for U.S. advanced manufacturing. You've mentioned some of the programs, Manufacturing Extension Partnership focused on small to medium enterprises, and Manufacturing USA, other public-private partnerships. And we really are in a situation now where the United States has benefited from global supply, but we've also seen the weaknesses that have been created regarding our balance of trade and our security. And in addition, and you serve on the House Committee on Education and Labor, and as co-chair of that task force on the future of work. So can you share with us some of the priorities that you believe need to be accomplished in Congress and for the nation, looking to the future of U.S. manufacturing-based supply chain, and in particular, looking at the future of America's workforce to step up to the innovation economy and these opportunities of the future?
Yeah, well, we're absolutely at a break glass moment, aren't we? Well, in that respect, in terms of what it means to be recruiting and training the talent, and also understanding the nimbleness and the flexibility of the future of work. Here a pandemic hit, and that changed a whole heck of a lot, and we're still kind of figuring that out in terms of how it works for some people to be remote and connecting in on all different sorts of platforms, to those who, we really are going to rely on being on the job and working with their hands and being in a collaborative space. And, time and time again, I see these manufacturers who, shut down briefly or didn't shut down at all and made themselves essential and, weathered the storm and kept going and kept things running for us. And, at the same time too, we can't be naive to what we're experiencing and addressing with our workforce shortages. And, it's really a sticking point for me, particularly as a member of the Education and Labor Committee. We, are investing in apprenticeships. We're investing in public-private partnerships, supporting our incredible unionized workforce as well, that, has some of those just cutting edge apprenticeship programs, and you get those skills and you can use them forever. And yet we've got a very competitive and tight labor market, and it's squeezing us. And so why I say we're at a break glass moment is, one, we need to use all the tools at our disposal. certainly in our NSF approach with investing in the STEM education and different grant opportunities for individuals. It's just going to be key for us, but also, thinking about barriers that have existed for too long. We haven't modernized to allow people who want to pursue the American dream and come here and get educated here and enable them to stay here successfully. It's not that everyone has to leave, it's just really cumbersome, and I think we're losing out on a lot of talent. We've got to start at a young age. We've got to have that continuity in our schools. There's certainly just great career and job opportunities for every American, and these are a lot of times, the engineering, the sciences, the technology fields, untapped talent, basic research meeting design and production capabilities to eventual shipment. It's just so critical to have, an honored and an exercise supply chain. And I think we need to be coordinating from the top down. It's sort of the "we want you" moment, right? We just like you recruit for the Army, we want you, we want you in manufacturing and in the sciences. And that's just going to have to be the cause du jour. And again, you go back to the first question you asked me, well, what led me to run for Congress? Well, heck, this was a big part of it, right? Which is the workforce development piece, and making sure that we're training and educating and plugging people into the jobs of today.
Thanks, and thanks for all that you're doing in these committees, and the focus also on making sure that America is the place that can always attract the brightest and best talent from around the world, as well as growing U.S. capacity in all these industries for the future. Switching gears now, and this is more thinking about what's been happening at DARPA. We know that also the Department of Energy has had a very successful program, ARPA-E. NIST over the past years had a very successful program called ATP, the Advanced Technology Program. I know that you've been deeply involved in the reauthorization of NIST and the new legislation there. Can you see that this could be a right time for NIST to be again the sponsor of a new advanced research projects agency focused on U.S. competitiveness and ARPA for commerce?
Yeah, those are such great examples and linkages in particular because of the success that we have seen, out of DARPA, out of ARPA-E. I know at one point we were wondering in this innovation or this infrastructure package if we were going to have IARPA, right? And this comes down to, hey, we got to do maintenance and repair, but we also have to, ensure that we're, innovating in our infrastructure system. But I think NIST, you're seeing NIST play such a critical role, and they're going to have that flexibility, in the dollars and the obviously the way in which we're prescribing some of the programs, but they'll have some of the flexibility to come forward. I was just blown away getting briefed by the readiness of the agency for the CHIPS Act and what a role they're going to play there. Well, let's not leave it so narrow just to CHIPS. I think that if we can exercise and utilize NIST for some of these other advanced manufacturing initiatives or competitiveness strategies, again, it's a secret weapon of the federal government. The Bayh-Dole Act, which kind of speaks to that, Stevenson-Weidler, which we need to reauthorize, on and on. We've got just a lot of great potential here.
Yeah, thanks so much, and also for raising Bayh-Dole and Stevenson-Weidler. As we look at greater federal investment, building out our innovation hubs, focusing on the future of workforce, removing barriers to return on investment in the nation, it's certainly been a big part of what you've been advocating for in your role, and certainly while I served as NIST director, we had a series of initiatives underway. So thank you for mentioning that.
I'm intentionally pulling on your heartstrings,
Well,
Alex said at the beginning,
well
we
done.
probably talk for as long as our hearts desired. So
No,
That was a part of it.
yeah, and thanks for keeping that on the radar of the Congress as well as we look to the future. As we're coming toward the end of our time, Congresswoman Stevens, you've been recognized in many ways as a role model for women in America seeking to make a difference. What thoughts would you share with other women who are looking to make an impact through their own lives and their careers for the future of the nation and our planet?
Well, we're certainly really enthusiastic about attracting and recruiting more women in the STEM fields, more women in leadership positions. Putting on the congressional lens, there's been 12,000 people in the history of the United States government who have served in either the House of Representatives or in the Senate of Congress as a whole. And yet we've continued to have under 500 women. We haven't even hit the 500 number yet in terms of that 12,000. So when you think about, should I put up my hand and look, I didn't run for Congress because I'm a woman, but I happened to be the first woman to ever represent my seat. And it was interesting at the end of the election cycle, Senator Debbie Stabenow reflected on this, and she said, we had a lot of great victories and a lot of women getting elected into seats, but it was, it wasn't just because they were running as women. It's because every issue they talked about is a woman's issue, right? And so and bringing that talent to the table. And so thinking about investment structures, I've got a bill called the IDEA Act to invest in. It's a accelerator program through the Department of Commerce to support entrepreneurship and business creation, and really looking at the minority population and kind of those who don't often get access to venture capital and how we allocate those resources and on. And we sometimes will ask, oh, can you have it all? And you can have what you ask for, right? You can have what you step up to the plate to put onto your plate, and certainly making those decisions accordingly. So I remain really enthusiastic that my first bill in the Congress was a bill called the Building Blocks of STEM Act to require the National Science Foundation to start making grants to promote the emergence of women in the STEM fields, starting from a young age, starting at the, some of the earliest levels in education, but also continuing on. And so we need to have the conversation, absolutely. But what we also need to do is continue to open doors for each other and for people. And I'm really excited about what we see taking place throughout the United States, and certainly am so honored to be one of the ones in the Congress working alongside so many incredible stakeholders to achieve these goals.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Stevens. As we are coming toward the end of our conversation time today, we've covered a lot of ground. We've certainly been looking at the dimensions of U.S. innovation, a resurgence of investment in response to what we can consider a new kind of Sputnik moment for the United States, a wake-up call for the nation regarding our position globally. There are certainly key issues being debated now around the future of standards, the role of standard essential patents, and the ability of innovators across the world, but in particular small and medium-sized U.S. innovative companies to participate in the standards process globally. And we've also talked about the power of immigration and the United States as a magnet to the talent of the world, to retain and to grow the best talent in this nation, to ensure that women in this nation know that they are welcome as innovators, as contributors, as leaders, and as you've done in your career thus far, and looking forward to great things also for the future. So as we bring our conversation to the close, what final remarks would you like to share with our audience today about the future of our nation?
Well, I'll say that you gave such a beautiful summary, and it's one of the reasons I'm so proud to call you a friend and a collaborator, and to spend this time with you today, and you know, with this incredible organization that you're helping to run. It's just been an absolutely enormous opportunity. But I think my conclusion here is, you know, we certainly, you know, can take a broad look at where we're going to go as a country in terms of what we're going to create, what we're going to make, how we're going to solve some of the challenges before us. Let us not, you know, kind of forget what we're also facing with climate change and some of the needs to, you know, embrace alternative energy and stem the tide of climate change. But we have the responsibility and the reason and the charge to be optimistic, to be excited, to be fired up. You know, the president, you know, as he came into office, elevated his science and technology policy advisor to a cabinet level. There's a priority and an emphasis on these fields of scale, these fields of scientific research, and I continue to be really optimistic as we're just about to hit that quarter 21st century mark, and can kind of look to the mid 21st century and what the world is going to look like and feel and do. Just these last 10 years alone, again, unprecedented kind of obstacles thrown at us on occasion, but also unprecedented making and doing and collaborating and discovering, and that's all going to continue to happen. So we'll keep this dialogue going, and I look forward to some of the continued research and recommendations and analysis that you all provide. And to everyone, you know, the door of my office on the science committee and as a member of Congress remains open. We want to be a place for ideas and the generation of ideas, and that only comes because we choose to have conversations like this. So thank you so much again, Dr. Copan.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman Haley Stevens. Thank you for engaging with this conversation with the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And on behalf of the entire community, really, of science, technology, innovation, and technology transfer in the US, we thank you for the great role that you're playing in leading the charge for so much of the future of US science, technology, and innovation. Thanks so much, Congresswoman Stevens.
You got it. See you soon.